And everyone, this call is being recorded and will be available to listen to afterwards.
Can I just say how fabulous you all look?
Oh, thank you, Nano. I'm sorry if we woke you up really early in the morning because of the time difference.
No. I was good. I was all ready to go, chat. So now I'm all ready to go now.
Well, we will. It's a good thing to. I probably should mention that it's in the evening to our UK folk from now on. So, everyone, Helen has a long line of credits and experience and everything. It would take me the whole hour to go through them. But most importantly, I knew Helen from B Audio. She ran the training there and she used to do the casting there. And I was a little intimidated by her because the standard was really, really high and the tests. I'll be honest, I was really intimidated, but I booked a coaching session with Helen, 2 director sessions, because her reputation preceded her. And I wanted somebody that was really going to be honest with me and straightforward. And the only word I can think of when I talk about those sessions was empowering. I'm a different narrator from having met with Helen. And that was just 2 sessions. I can't wait for more. And I just want her to share I've changed so many things I've done just from learning from Helen for 2 sessions. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Helen because I don't want to lose 1 minute of valuable time. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. And then when there's an opportune moment, I'll ask Helen throughout the call. But if everyone can please stay on mute so that, you know, dogs, cats, all the extra noise. Helen, over to you.
Okay, there's actually 1 minute to go. So I'm going
so
to
we should.
add in
Maybe
case
we
other
should.
people are waiting to come in. It's so nice to see people. It's lovely to see some familiar faces. I can see Kelvin. I can see Nano, whom I know. I can't see anybody else at the moment that I think I know, but it's so lovely to be here. I am so chuffed to be invited to take a cup of joe. I'm sorry I haven't got a cup of anything. I've got a glass of something instead. And I promise you it is not alcoholic. It is not the biggest gin you've ever seen. I'm promising you it is only elderflower cordial. Very nice it is too. Which actually, if people are worried about hydration, I find works really well because it's slightly sticky rather than just being water. I find if I just drink water, I get terribly, terribly spitty. It's like a shower, really. It's all but I find that if I add either, I only use a tiny bit of elderflower water, it just stops that spittiness quite so much. And the other thing I do is I crunch celery at regular intervals, which I find much better than apples for moisturizing and giving me you know, a nice clean mouth. Celery I highly recommend. And the other thing I do is I drink coconut water.
Really?
Which is also very good because it's slightly oily, so it coats the throat. And if you're narrating for hours and hours and hours and doing an 8-hour day and your voice gets a bit tired, I find coconut water really, really useful. The other thing I do is steam. I'm going to get my steamer. I'll show you my steamer. 1 second.
I got mine. She told me about it and I got mine in the mail. I'm so excited to use it.
Did it arrive, Daniela?
Yes, it arrived the other day. It's very, I'm telling, it's the West End musical girls did them. Use that, huh?
Absolutely. No, I don't dilute the coconut water straight out of the big jars, the innocent one coconut water. That's my steamer. So you fill that up with, well, you don't fill it. I fill it to about there with boiling water. And you just stick that bit in your mouth, having got the bung the right way around, and you just breathe through your mouth, and it floats over your vocal folds and is very relaxing and very moisturizing. So those are my little secrets, and now it's 9 o'clock, so we can start properly. Ask me a question, Daniela.
So I'm curious as to I mean, this is a question everyone asks, but I'm really curious about you. What made you make the transition, because you were acting and everything and all your other bits, what made you start the narration and how did you become introduced to the world of narration?
Right. I trained as an actor, and part of my acting training, which was a full-time drama school course, was microphone technique and working on a microphone. And I did quite a bit of radio when I left drama school, when I was acting. And I always enjoyed being in front of a microphone. I've always been somebody for whom sound is more important than pictures, I think. I didn't realise at the time, but I grew up without a television. So radio was part of my childhood, and I listened to the radio. I still listen to the radio in preference to watching television. I like it much better. So that's my... Sorry, I'm just going to shut the door so that
No,
it's a bit less echoey. So radio was always my thing and something that I loved listening to. And then when I stopped acting and went into television presentation, purely pragmatically, because it was the year that I got married, and I quite thought I'd like to see my husband rather more often than the odd Sunday afternoon, which was what was going to happen if I stayed in the theatre, because he's an actor as well. So I was very lucky. I'm one of the only people I know who got a job from an advertisement in the stage newspaper. How is that? I mean, yep. I was in the wings in a theatre watching The Tempest, in which my husband was playing Caliban. We just got married, and I'd come up from London. I was working in the West End, and I'd gone down to... He was in Southampton. I'd gone down for the weekend, and I was in the wings flicking through a copy of The Stage, like you do, and there was an advertisement saying, "New television station opening in the Midlands, presenters wanted." And I thought, oh, Midlands. That's where we had decided to live, because the Midlands, as you might guess, for those of you who are not in the UK, the Midlands is in the middle. So if he was working in Scotland and I was working in Devon, there was a chance that we might actually, we might pass like ships in the night on the odd weekend. So that's why we moved to the Midlands. Also, I'd grown up there. So I thought, oh, I can work at home. If I get this job, I can work at home. So I applied for this job, and bugger me, I got the bloody thing. So that was the most terrifying thing that had ever happened, because suddenly I was doing live television presentation. It wasn't helped by the fact that I was 30 at the time, and their maximum age for applications was 26. So there was a whole sort of, my God, help, what do I do? So I was, hennaing the hair, and all of this was going on. Anyway, that got me into doing voiceover work, and quite a lot of it at the time. And I recorded my first audiobook, or audiobooks, in 1982. There was then rather a long gap before I did any more. Thankfully, those books are not available. I'm very, very thankful to say that they don't exist, because I'm sure they were absolutely awful. Anyway, that was my first audiobook adventure. And then 3 careers later. So I then worked in television as a presenter. I then got shuffled, or was very lucky to be able to move sideways. Somebody went on maternity leave. I got a job as a researcher. That led to me being made a assistant producer and director. And then I ended up being a staff producer for ITV for 17 years, making documentaries, and voicing documentaries as well, quite a lot. For other people, not for me necessarily. And then I took redundancy from that and went back into the theatre briefly. Then I went back into the theatre as a producer and director. Then I became the head of learning for a local theatre. Then I did medical secretary for a bit, just for a change. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to be a medical secretary. It's far too boring, far too challenging, all those big words. I'm one of the few people in the world who can spell hypergammaglobulinemia without thinking about it, and even say it. So that was very interesting. Anyway, I went back and I thought, what do I do? So I took redundancy. I'd done all sorts of other stuff. I could have retired, but I thought, no, I don't want to. There's life in the old dog yet, I thought. And so I started doing audiobooks, working with an American producer called Paul Heitch, whom I know Pearl knows. Phil's waving at me,
Pearl's
and
there.
I suspect other people do as well. This was when ACX wasn't available in the UK, but it was available in the US. And I did 3 books with Paul on ACX, with him acting as producer and publisher. And he just hired me in, basically. And then I got to the end of that, and then Audible UK got in touch with me, and I did 3 books for them via a different production house in London, again working remotely. So I had not this setup, but I had a little studio at home, a sort of cupboard under the stairs studio. So I did 6 books like that. Then I thought, yes, I like this. This is something I can actually do, because for me it was the closest combination of acting and not acting, if you see what I mean, not having all the downsides of acting, like being away from home, having to go on tour, working 10 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, having no holidays, no weekends, no anything. Still don't have holidays, but it's different. I now am in control of it. So, and I thought, yeah, I think I can do this. So I got in touch with B Audio at that point, and this is before B came to the UK. It was when they were only operating in the US. And after much tweaking, I have to say, by their chief engineer of my home studio, I eventually got onto their roster, and I did half a dozen books for them. And then they decided to set up in the UK, and they needed somebody to kind of help, I guess, wrangle people. That's why I got called the voice wrangler, which was, I had visions of a Stetson and Spurs, but neither of those ever arrived in the post. So I just had to do it without the Stetson and Spurs. And basically what they asked me to do was to find 50 narrators in the UK who could work remotely. So I put an advertisement in various trade newspapers, and I got 2,500 applications, all of which I listened to, all of which I sent feedback on. And of those 2,500 applications, fewer than 50 people were good enough to go forward. So
Wow.
it was, people were sending me gaming reels and, just, I can't tell you how shocked I was at how not low the standard was, but how unaware people were of what was involved in audiobooks. It wasn't that people were bad at doing voiceovers or anything else. They just literally didn't have a clue. What do you mean I've got to read it before I start recording it? And, well, how long will it take me? Well, probably twice as long as it'll take you to read. Oh, do you mean, what do you mean I can't just do it in 10 hours straight off? No, you can't just do it in 10 hours straight off. So it was people's misunderstandings really about how things were. So then I went back to B and said, you need somebody to because nobody was recording remotely in the UK at all. People were doing audiobooks for sure, but they were going into mainstream studios. They weren't working in setups like this. So they were all working with a director and an engineer and somebody to make their tea for them and all that lardy-farty stuff. And so it was for people to work on their own and independently for a publisher or a production house was something almost unknown in the UK. So I set up with an audio engineer we called it a studio certification course, because basically most of the studios that people were working in, the home studios, were just not able to produce the quality that B and other publishers insisted on. So we did an awful lot of work. We created this whole course of 6 parts, and they sent various bits of audio back, and they were marked, and they learned about their settings and tweaking this, that, and the next thing. I mean, some people here, I think, probably have done that course, or bits of that. Yes, I know you have done it, but other people as well. So that then, B then decided to drop that, because we did it for only 3 different sets of recording software. And there were people coming in to be saying, can you do it for Reaper? Can you do it for Pro Tools? Can you do it for GarageBand? Can you do it for X, Y, Z and everything else? And basically the engineer that I was working with and I could, between us, cover 4 different sets of software, all of which were perfectly acceptable. But if we would have gone further down the route of doing more, B or us would have had to purchase the software, and you're talking 300-400 quid a pop for any of this, professional audio software. And B wasn't prepared. They weren't making enough money out of the course, and neither was I, to be able to afford to do that. So they decided to drop the official course through B, but because I'd written all the paperwork, they gave me the copy. And I sat on it for about 2 years, and I was still getting inquiries from people via the B website saying, do you do coaching? Can I join the coaching course? And I thought, this is ridiculous. There's people begging for this information, and I'm sitting on it, so I'll do it. So I launched it 2018, 17. Nano and Bethan were my test runners. Bethan Dixon-Bate and Nano Nagel were my 2 beta testers. So they did the course for me and proofread it, and were fantastic in helping getting it to the state it's in. And now I do that course as me, as Helen Lloyd, not as B Audio. Slightly changed in that there's more about acting, more about performance, and slightly less about the technical side of things, although the technical side is obviously covered because that's a huge part of what we all do. So I think that answers your question.
It did.
But it went so long ago, I can't remember what the question was.
It brought up actually another question. How did you... Because the things you noticed when I had the session with you weren't things that I've heard people give standard advice about narration or that anybody's ever said to me before. And I'm wondering, do you just play by instinct when you work with people completely, or are there things that you notice we all do?
Yeah, there are some things that everybody does.
What do we do?
I'll come to that in a minute. I want to talk about instinct, first of all.
Okay.
I think instinct is really useful, and it's something that, as narrators, we all need to tune into our instincts. Because if you ignore your instinct, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Because if you think about, I don't know how many of you have got any theatre background. I suspect quite a few of you, and I know quite a few of you have. If you think about when you're in a theatre show, the first read-through, when you're all together in that very intense environment and you're doing that first read-through for the first time, that is very often your gut instinct and your immediate reaction to the text in front of you. And it has a spontaneity and a liveliness and a truth that very often disappears through the rehearsal process. If you've got a good director, you'll get it back by the first night. But if you haven't got a good director, you may never, ever get it back again. It's that instinct. It is just instinct. And I think instinct that is something that all of us have. And what I think I try to do is give narrators the confidence to trust their own instincts. I very rarely to say to anybody, you're doing that wrong. What I will say is try to shift your emphasis into another direction, and so that I guide them into the way of finding their own way to what they need to get to. But I think that the reason, I've always been quite good at picking up on things, but I think when I worked in television, and because I was doing documentaries, I wasn't working, I mean, there was the odd actor that was a presenter of a series, but mainly I was working with people who weren't used to being in front of a camera or on television or being interviewed. So you get the frightened rabbit syndrome. You get the staring into the headlight, sheer terror thing. So I got quite good at getting people to relax and trust that I was interviewing them because they knew more about what they were talking about than I did. So that was what I was trying to bring out of people. But I did find that when I was editing, because I was editing video, the pictures for me always got in the way. And I used to edit, once the structure of the program was put down, I would edit with my eyes shut. Because for me, the story, the audio, the vocal bit of the story was what got the story in a way that worked for an audience. The pictures, for me, just got in the way. So I think I probably am a much more oral person than a visual person. So I think that's just something that is me rather than is something. But I always try to guide people so that they find their own way to get to where they want to be. Because none of you, the wonderful thing about audiobooks is that we're all absolutely unique. And all right, I may be going for a job or looking at a job that I might be cast as. I mean, I have played Pearl Hewitt's mother, would you believe? In an audiobook. And it was a great joy to play Pearl Hewitt's mother. I was slightly disgruntled because I'm not quite old enough to be her mother, but that's beside the point. But we're all unique in our own voices. So even though there may be half a dozen people who are my age, who could be cast, that I would be cast as, that, you know, they're looking at you, you know, there may be half a dozen of you who look and perhaps even sound somewhat similar. You may have similar vocal qualities. But the thing you bring to an audiobook or to your narration is your uniqueness. And that is why you're cast. So never try to sound like anybody else. Always remember that you are being cast because you are you and you sound like you, and they want you because of how you sound. If your face and your voice go together, then that's an added bonus, because you can then stick your photograph all over the place and it won't affect your, you know, the way people see you. But if, for example, you are my age or you look my age, and you sound like a 16-year-old, then you've got real problems. Because, I mean, I know narrators in their 40s who sound like 16, and I know people in their early 20s who sound like they're 60. And then you have a disconnect. And that's when it becomes really, you then have to make a decision as to whether you have your picture up there or you use an avatar or a logo or a design. And I would think if your face and your voice don't match, then think twice before using your photograph. But if you sound like you look, then that's great. Go ahead and have the photograph. Right, I'm going to shut up now. Question.
No. The other one was, what are the things that you see that we all do that you wish you, especially even starting with the whole bee casting and everything, are there things that you see everyone does that you wish you could tell, or even that you did when you started?
That I did when I started, or that I
Well,
hear?
you were more experienced when you started, probably, but
Yeah,
what
I
are
think,
common mistakes?
okay, common mistake. The most common mistake, I think, is vocal patterning. So that people fall into a rhythm, particularly as they get into something. It's very easy to go, and I'm not suggesting that anybody goes di-da, 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 di-da. But it's very easy to get onto that treadmill, particularly if it's not a wonderful script. And let's face it, 9 times out of 10, we're making silk purses out of sow's ear. You know, we don't get wonderful scripts all the time. And it's very easy to without even realizing you're doing it, to get into a rhythm and a pattern that repeats. People often say that a narrator talks too quickly or too slowly. Very often you see that in Audible reviews. Ignore them, ignore them, ignore them, ignore them, ignore them, because 9 times out of 10, those people are listening to your audio at double speed anyway. So how the hell do you know whether you're talking at the right speed or not? What I think makes you sound too fast or too slow is if your pattern is very rhythmical and repetitive. So what breaks it up and makes it appear faster or slower is having pauses, is allowing the text to breathe. I don't mean great long chunks of dead air. I mean a pause that's filled with energy and intensity and that changes. So you don't go blah, 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 3-second pause, blah, 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 3-second pause. You go blah, 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 half a second, blah, 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 2 seconds, blah, blah, whatever. You're led by the text. You're always led by the text. You're not led by punctuation, because punctuation doesn't always help the oral. It helps with the understanding as you read it, but it often gets in the way of the oral read. And if you start pausing for commas, you find you're either pausing too much or not pausing enough, or they're in the wrong place, or whatever. So, again, that's down to your instinct. Think about how you read a book when you read it to yourself for pleasure. Do you hear the voices in your head? To a degree? I certainly do. I visualize people. I know what the characters look like. I know what they sound like. I know what accent they've got. I read with accents. But there's always a flow to it, because it's a dramatic thing. It's like reading a play, except that you've got all the stage directions in there as well. And that's how I think, an audiobook for me is like reading a play script with some extra bits. And that's really, and you've got to get under the skin of that text and allow it, so that you're in control of it, but you are inside it. You're not outside of it looking in. You're right there in the middle of it. And that, for me, allows you to give the variety, the vocal variety that you need as an audiobook narrator.
Wow. Okay, so play the person, not the voice.
Yeah. That's
Explain.
really an extension of what I was saying. I talk to audiobook narrators often who say, and coaches, who say, okay, think Maggie Smith. I would cast Maggie Smith in this poor part. Well, if you want to cast Maggie Smith in this part, cast Maggie Smith. Don't cast me, because I'm not Maggie Smith. And for me, as soon as I were, Maggie Smith doesn't do audiobooks. Perhaps I should put that on my business card, because Maggie Smith doesn't do audiobooks. Do you think that'd be a good idea? Nano's waving a hand furiously. But I think that as soon as yes, I do occasionally think of other people, but I'm not saying, okay, so Lady Blogs is Maggie Smith, Mrs. Plod is Judi Dench, so and so and so and so is Juliet Stevenson, and the men are Alan Rickman or whatever, because I don't want to impersonate those people playing those roles. I want to make those roles my roles. It's always got to be me doing them, not Maggie Smith or Judi Dench or anybody else. So although I might have a visual picture of that character, and I will have a visual picture because it will come from what the text says about them, how other people react to them often gives you visual clues as well. Are they uptight? Are they relaxed? Are they angry? Are they tense? Are they jealous? Are they happy? Are they laid back? All of those will give you the clues to the character. And their voice will come out of who they are, not just a voice. If you just put voices onto your characters in an audiobook narration, you have the danger of, I think, going into the Ministry of Silly Voices. Yes, you might be able to do umpty 7 accents, but why? If you've got, most audiobooks are set in one location, so you're far more likely to have 15 people from, I don't know, a village in Devon than you are, and you wouldn't therefore want to have an Irish person, a Scottish person, a Geordie, a Welshman, somebody from Norfolk, and a Lithuanian in the same village. It just wouldn't happen. So you end up with people, smaller groups, it's often family groups, where people would often sound the same. So the way you make them sound different and differentiate between one or other, of course you can age your voice or make your voice sound younger, or you do a more masculine voice. I'll get onto that in a minute, because it's not about going deeper or higher necessarily to change sex. There's other ways to do it. It's about, okay, who is this person? What is their attitude and their response? Because everything they say is a response to what somebody has said to them. So unless you truthfully play or hear and then respond truthfully, you're doing the book a disservice. And even if it takes you, when you first start out, a long time to get to be able to switch from one person to the other very quickly, that's something that takes a lot of practice. If you have to pause and go, okay, I'm switching from Jemima to Gwendolen here, or Cecily to Gwendolen. Say you're doing The Importance of Being Earnest. You've got a scene. You've got Lady Bracknell, you've got Gwendolen, you've got Cecily, all in a scene together. Now, who's related to who? Gwendolen's related to Lady Bracknell, so they might have some similarity. Lady Bracknell is older, Gwendolen is younger, but there would be perhaps a familial similarity. Cecily is from a different family, so she may sound slightly more countrified. But that's not what Cecily's about. Cecily is a different personality and a different character from Gwendolen. So I don't think about what Gwendolen sounds like and what Cecily sounds like. I think, who is Gwendolen and who is Cecily? And those are the people I'm trying to play. And that's what I mean about playing the character, not the voice. And if you... It can be quite hard if you've got a situation of 14 people at a tea party. Romances particularly always have a ball scene. So you've got 6 young girls and 6 young men all standing round a dance floor going, oh, I fancy him. Oh, isn't he dishy? Oh, I don't like him at all. Whatever they happen to be saying. So how do you make those girls, who are all between 18 and 21, who are all upper class twits because they're Debs in effect, and how do you make the men, who are all terribly, terribly, I say, jolly, jolly, oh, what ho, look at that bent old bean, she's awfully sexy, oh, look at the legs on that one. How do you make them different? How do you make them individual? There's no clue in the text. Very often there's no clue in the text, so I make up things for them. Okay, one of them is jealous of everybody. Doesn't matter what, she's just one of those people who is always envious of other people. Another one is a bit silly, and she's a bit dim maybe. I mean, not terribly, terribly dim, so nobody would notice. She's just a tiny, weeny bit dim. And then there's another one who really wants to be terribly sort of laid back and languid because, life's just such a bore. There's nothing in the script to tell me that, but I give them those characteristics. And that then allows me to play that scene of, oh, look at his legs, isn't he gorgeous? Well, actually, I think he's a bit spindly, whatever it happens to be, with those different voices coming from who the people are, not rather than going, oh, okay, I'm going to make one of them sound like this, and one of them sound like this, and one of them can have a Scottish accent, because that's completely meaningless for the text that I've got in front of me. So always, 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 even if you have to invent it, even if it isn't within the text, find the character, and that will lead you to the voice. Always.
Sorry, I got so into that, I forgot my next question. That was really, yeah, that was, so, okay, so the other thing I wanted to delve into more was, I remember you talking about the difference between how large you play, moving from acting. Some of us have been on stage and everything. As I said, I'm notorious for playing to the back row. And then getting the energy, but in the small booth, getting the impact and subtly.
Okay. If you're an actor on a stage and you're playing the London Palladium, your performance will be very different from if you're playing a studio theatre at the King's Head at Islington, for example, or you're playing a studio theatre in any theatre anywhere. So you know that, if you're doing Les Mis in the London Coliseum, you've got to be big. But if you're playing Les Mis in a tiny, tiny little diddly theatre on the Edinburgh Fringe, you don't go, you go. So we're all used to toning our performance to a degree. Now this is somebody's ear. When I'm talking into that, I am talking into their headphones. So the last thing you want to do is go, Oh, for a muse of fire! Because you'll deafen them. You've got to go, oh, for a muse of fire. And that's the difference. One big mistake that almost all narrators make, almost everybody, is that they get their narrative absolutely beautifully. Their narrative is conversational, it's relaxed, it's intimate. Their microphone is here, they're talking in my ear, I'm latched on and they're real. And then, would you like to come for some tea? Said Betty. Oh, yes, please, Jemima. Now, not only does that make me as a listener go, oh my God, what's happened? But it also makes it almost impossible for the poor soul who is going to be mastering that audio to get it to sound right. So you have to learn the basic microphone technique of shouting without shouting. Have you ever heard a couple in a restaurant having a flaming row when there are, people all around them? They don't shout. Nobody would ever know that they're having an argument, but there's an intensity behind what they say, which means that it's all really angry and they're really cross, but they never ever raise their voices. Or people who have rows in front of their children, they tend to do it with a smile on their face so that their children don't ever know that they're being absolutely furious. So, we all do it. We all know how to do it. But because we think of audiobooks as being a performance, those of us who are lucky enough to have had a theatre career prior, or still have a theatre career, many people are still treading the boards at the same time as they're doing audiobooks. The declamatory style, forget it. Leave it at the stage door. You do not need it in audiobooks. What you want to do is bring your listeners to you. You want to draw them in. And if you get at all declamatory or shouty or unconnected, it pushes them away. So, bring it, do less. Always less. It's much easier if you then listen back. Check your own audio. Obviously, check your own audio when you're starting out, when you're practicing, when you're making a piece for your reels or you're recording an audition. Always check your audio and check it against the text. I can't believe how many people send in submissions and auditions with misreads in. I mean, truly. And if if a casting director has sent you a custom script to read, they'll be very familiar with that script. They may have 150 different people reading the same script. They're going to know if you make a mistake. So check your bloody audio. Listen back to everything before you stick it on your website or anywhere else. Imagine, there must be however many millions of people who have got samples of A Christmas Carol or Pride and Prejudice as their classic reads on their websites. Now, if you make a mistake in any of those works are so familiar that anybody listening to it will go, oh my God, she's just called her Elizabeth rather than Eliza, or Eliza rather than Elizabeth, or whatever it happens to be. Personally, I would advise you to steer as far away as possible from scripts like Christmas Carol and Pride and Prejudice, not because you won't do them justice, but because 300 other people have done them justice before you. So I would always go, if you want to do a Jane Austen, do a Jane Austen, but find one that has been done fewer than I think the last time I looked, there were 456 different versions of Pride and Prejudice available on Audible. So, why make life more difficult for yourself?
So another thing that I've made major changes in, you'd be proud, I haven't had a chance to brag yet, but thanks to you, because I've never surprisingly actually considered it, was how do you do you were talking about, you asked me if I did a warm-up going into the booth, and you said not just vocal or physical, and I never, ever did anything to focus before going in. And I'm wondering if you have any tips about that, because it's a huge game changer, I'm noticing.
You want my Sybil Thorndike story, don't you?
Yes, please.
When I was at drama school, Sybil Thorndike came to the college I was at and gave us a masterclass. She then came to see Troilus and Cressida, in which I was playing Cressida, and I have never had such stage fright in my entire life. However, that's beside the point. For those of you who don't know who Sybil Thorndike was, she was a British dame, a grande dame of the British theatre. She was the original St. Joan in Bernard Shaw's St. Joan, amongst other things. She was a wonderful, wonderful actress. Slightly old-fashioned now in terms of her performance and her delivery, but she was wonderful. Anyway, she came to my college and she was 80 something, probably 83, 84 at the time. And she was married to a wonderful theatre director called Lewis Casson. And he was wheelchair bound and a bit like Winston Churchill. He looked like a bit like Winston Churchill. So he was sitting in the stalls down here. And Dame Sybil came onto the stage, this tiny, diminutive little figure with a walking stick. And she arrived on the stage and she plonked us. There was a chair and a glass of water and a lectern and a bunch of flowers. She ignored all of that and she stuck herself on the front of the stage with her legs dangling into the orchestra pit. And she sat there and she just talked for about an hour. And one of the questions was, how do you get ready for a performance? And she said, there are two things that I say to myself every night before I go on stage. One of them is, I am young, I am beautiful, and I have a secret. And the other is, be still and know that I am God. And it was just like, wow. Because she wasn't young, she was never beautiful, but you always got the sense that there was something at the back of her head that she knew that nobody in the rest of that room knew. And that's what made her performances so intriguing. And the be still and know that I'm God is just, right, I'm in charge here. What I say goes. And that allows you to fill those spaces, the pauses, because there's that, once you get your head right, it's like the half hour in the dressing room before you go on stage. You're putting your makeup on, you're doing your wig, you're getting your costume on, and I don't know about other people, but I used to get into the theatre at least an hour before curtain up every night. And I didn't talk to anybody, I didn't engage with anybody, I'd just be there in getting I wasn't going me, or any of that rubbish. I was just going, maybe for only 5 minutes before I went on. There was that moment of, okay, everything else gone. All the thoughts of the day, worries about what I'm going to eat. God, this costume's tight. I must have put on ½ pound. Whatever it happened to be, gone. Just gone. Empty the brain and put yourself in the space of that play that you're in. Or in our case now, put yourself in the space of that audiobook. And I do that, religiously. I come in here, I turn all the lights off, so I'm sitting here in total darkness, apart from the screen in front of me and my tablet that I read on. Everything else is pitch black like it is now. I've got a keyboard that if I wave my hands over it lights up, so I don't even have to look at the keys. So you just wave your hands over it and the keyboard lights. So it's pitch black. I even turn that, even that is off. So there's only the light coming off the screen and me. And I just go, okay, just let it go. Let the shoulders go. Let the breath go. Let everything go. Just relax. Where are you? You're in this book. You're so-and-so. Okay, you're reading this. These are the people. This is the world that I'm inhabiting. And I'm in that world. And off you go. Press record and away you go. And I do that every day, and I do that every time I step in here. And it's my bit of mumbo jumbo, if you like, but it gets me into the space so that, even if I'm recording, I quite often record really early in the morning. If I wake up at 4 o'clock, I'll get up and come in here at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
I don't do it very often, but I do occasionally, and I'll work till maybe 9. Then I'll have a break and have some breakfast, go and do gardening or walk the dog or whatever I'm doing. And then I'll probably have a sleep after lunch. And then I might come in here again at 9 o'clock at night and work till 2 or 3. Not on the same day, obviously, but, you know, my hours are very flexible. But giving myself that whoosh moment allows me to come back to the same place, no matter what time of day or night it happens to be that I'm recording. So I'm completely unaware of what time it is. That's completely unimportant, because that's why I like it to be dark, because I can then come in and just focus and concentrate, and that's it.
Do you think that that working in casting in B audio affected the way you now do audition? Being on the other side of it, has it affected the way you work and audition and narrate, or do you think because you were kind of setting it up from the beginning?
All I can say is, for all of you, most people who are casting will not listen to more than the first 2 lines of a reel. 2 or 3 lines, maybe 4 or 5 seconds. They may go on for longer, but if you don't make a good first impression in those first 4 or 5 lines, then forget it, because you've blown it. So the secret is, don't be afraid to rewrite the text. If you've got a wonderful piece from a book that is a bit too long or a bit too short, or has got not enough dialogue in, or too much description between the dialogue, rewrite it, edit it, make it work as a piece that stands up on its own. I quite often do that. I will find a piece when I'm recording a book. If there's a passage that I think, oh, I really like that bit, that's a really good sample read for a particular genre or a particular accent or whatever, and I'll mark it in the text, and I'll mark it in my audio, and I clip just that bit out and stick it in a separate folder. So I've got a portfolio of potential samples at any one time. But then you look at it and you think, okay, well, this is running 4.5 minutes. That's way, way too long. I want it to run 2 minutes. But I want that line from that character, and I want that line from that character, and I want that beginning, that end, and that bit of description. So how do I make that happen? Okay, I chop that out, I chop that out, I chop those extra 2 characters out, I chop that out, I shorten the descriptive passage and perhaps rewrite it so that it's significantly shorter than it was, and then I stick that bit of dialogue with that bit of dialogue and put those 2 together, and then I do that and that, and then I end up with a 2-minute piece.
We have a question. I think you answered most of it, but just to confirm. So Rebecca's asking, so the first 2 lines, even if they like it, I mean,
No,
if they really like it?
If they really like it, they'll stay. That's what I mean about the first impression. You've got, I mean, if a decision is generally made very quickly, and I know within, I would say, probably 1.5 to 2 minutes, whether somebody has got what I want them to have in any particular thing. You know yourself, you listen to samples on Audible. Yes, do it for classics as well, Bethan. It doesn't matter.
You beat me to
You're
it.
using them for samples, do it. So people are, where was I? I've lost my thread, sorry. People will stay with you if you make the impression, and if you get there. They may not listen to the whole 2 minutes. In fact, they very, very rarely will. But as long as you can get past the first 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 15 seconds, you've got them hooked. You have to hook them. And starting out by going, hello, my name's Helen Lloyd, and today I'm going to be reading you a piece from blah, blah, blah. Forget it. No. Don't slate it. No slate, no name, no anything. Straight in with whatever the line is. And if they want it slating, or if you want to slate it, do it at the end. You've been listening to Helen Lloyd reading blah, blah, blah. Make sure that the naming of your files is absolutely accurate. Your name. I can't believe how many people sent auditions for B without their names on the file. They'd go, audition. And you go, okay, I've got 400 of those. How the hell do I know which one is which? I don't. So you just junk the lot. They just don't get listened to at all. So, Nano Nagel, what the book is called, what the genre is, and anything else you need them to know. but keep it brief, keep it compact, and just, only send the best one. And if it's not right, and if you're sitting there going, oh God, that's not very good, but I'll send it anyway, just don't, because you have one chance to make a good first impression. And if you send something to somebody that isn't your bet, if you're not making a good first impression, you've blown it, because they're going to remember that in 5 years' time. The fact that you've moved on and improved is no interest to them at all. They will still remember, oh God, yes, that's that woman who made an absolute balls up of that read, and they won't listen to you, I'm afraid.
You have to change your name.
Well, yeah, change your name is a good idea. No, but that's slightly unfair, because
I know.
everybody in the industry knows that people improve, and that they know that there is room always for improvement. I listened to the first books I did, and they sound awful. I hate them. And I know that I've improved, and I know that I continue to improve. So people know that there's room for that. What they're listening for is somebody with the potential to get to do a really, really good narration. Now, your potential is always your potential. That actually doesn't change that much. The way you realize your potential is what changes. But essentially, you've either got the chops or you haven't got the chops. When I say that, I don't mean to say that anybody hasn't got the chops for everybody, because you can't please all of the people all of the time. You can't ever hope that everybody is going to think you're either wonderful or awful, because the whole thing about listening to audio is that it's totally subjective. So it's why you get reviews where one reviewer will say, God, this is the worst book I've ever listened to, and somebody else will say, this is the best narration I've ever heard. So, if one person doesn't like you, or says that, oh God, I can't listen to this man or this woman, don't take it to heart, because for everyone who says that, there's going to be somebody who thinks you're absolutely the dog's bollocks. Pardon my language, but yeah, you know what I mean. The bee's knees is perhaps slightly politer. So, you can't judge it. You can't judge yourself, but all you can do is give yourself the best possible chance. And in order to give your best possible chance, you have to be ready to start submitting to people. One of the biggest mistakes that I think that narrators make, generally across the board, is that, they do, and it's not to do with the number of books you do, because, I know narrators who've done maybe 3 books. I can count them on one hand, but I know 2 or 3 narrators who've done literally 2 or 3 books, and they've got it. They're absolutely brilliant. That you can listen to them. They've got the right. They're just great, and they're going to be good. It's like some actors. You just, you walk into a room and you see an actor on a stage, and you just go, I don't care if it's your first week out of drama school. You've got it. You can do it. So there are always going to be people who are ready from the word go, from the year dot. But there are other people who are not going to be ready until they've maybe done 10 audiobooks, 15 audiobooks, 20 audiobooks. I didn't start applying to mainstream publishers, for want of a better word, until I'd done about 25 audiobooks. And then I thought, okay, I maybe can get away with this just. But when I got to 40 audiobooks, I thought, my God, I wish I waited till I got to 40, because I'm actually hugely better now at 40 than I was at 25. And now I've got to 80. I wish I'd waited till now, because all of those moments that you've sent stuff off to people, they do remember. And they know you can improve, so they're not going to judge you if it's not, if what they're looking for is your potential. But they will also look for the quality of your audio, the confidence that you speak with, your believability, your own immersion in the text and the characters, and accuracy in the text. So it's, it behoves you to check your own stuff. Don't send off stuff that's got your elbow clonking or your head knocking a microphone. because that's just, you know, that's what they'll remember. Oh, that's the woman who couldn't keep her hand stills. And I don't do this when I'm recording, surprisingly. I sit incredibly still when I'm recording. But it's very easy to think, okay, I did a really great read on that and send it off. But then there's a glitch or a clunk or a dog barking or something in the background that you haven't heard. So check your audio before you send it. Don't think that it doesn't matter because the performance is going to speak for itself. Yes, it may well do, but it might just blow it for you if you don't take due care.
So working with proofers and editors and everything, checking it as well yourself and then sending it to them,
it
or
depends what
after?
it is. I mean, if you're sending an audition, yes, absolutely check it for yourself. If you're putting something on your website, yes, absolutely check it for yourself, or on any of the, you know, the casting sites online that do, you know, that you can upload stuff to. Absolutely check it for yourself. When I'm recording a book for somebody, I don't go through it and listen to it all. No, I don't. I used to, but I don't now because I sort of know that it's going to be all right. But if I see anything that looks odd, I visually scan it. And if I see a peak or a you know, something that looks too loud, or I see a long pause and I think, oh, that's weird. Why did I pause for 4.5 seconds there? I will go back and check that. And also the other thing I do when I'm recording, if I've got a scene with lots and lots and lots of characters in, I drop a marker in every time a character changes. Just so that I can, if I need to, if I feel I need to, go back and check that there's no bleed through of the voices. By which I mean that my Scottish accent for one character isn't bleeding through into the narrative voice for the next line, and then the next character is clean as they come in. So I do check that sort of thing even now, just to make sure everything's absolutely clean.
Because that's jarring when you listen to an audiobook
Yeah.
and you notice somebody uses the wrong voice.
Yeah. Or it just edges over. It's, you know, if you're doing a really,
Yeah.
I mean, there are some transitions which are really hard. Welsh to Indian is probably one of the hardest ones I've ever had to do. Scottish to Irish is really hard because they're so similar. Welsh to Indian is hysterical because it's you know, you're lilting along like this and it's all beautiful, and suddenly you find yourself going like this and it doesn't sound so different, but suddenly it's not Welsh anymore. And it's just, and I have actually had a dialogue between a Welsh person and an Indian person in one book. And I had to go back and I had to check every single one because it was so difficult not to do it. German and French is also very difficult. I'm doing a book at the moment with a German and a French person speaking to each other in English, and that's quite hard.
How do you learn your accents? Do you just have an ear for them, or do you get training?
There are some I can't do. There are some I can't do. I cannot do Geordie Pearl. I'm sorry, but I just can't. No, that was awful. I can't do Geordie. I mean, no, there's 2 Geordies here tonight, actually. Kelvin and Pearl are both from that side of the world. And I can't do that one. I can do, I think most others I'm reasonably good at. I have got quite a good ear. But I was doing one the other day where I'd got somebody from Barrow-in-Furness talking to somebody from Lancaster. And they're quite different, but they're very, very, very similar. So I did actually go to an accent coach and say, help me, what are the key things to differentiate between those two? How do you get good at accents? You listen. It's all about listening. And you practice. You listen to real people doing accents, not actors doing accents. That's the other tip. There's a wonderful website called Youglish, which has got real people. The BBC archive is also very useful, but better to listen to people who come from where you're trying to do rather than actors pretending that they come from where you want to do. And just practice. It's finding the tune, it's finding the rhythm, and find an accent coach. You know, if there's one you're really struggling with, I mean, I work with an accent coach quite regularly for American accents because I can't hear I know they're all different, but I can't hear the difference between. My tendency is, because I've done Tennessee, well, I go deep south for everything. So you got Blanche Dubois. I'm in Tennessee Williams country, where even if I'm supposed to come from New York, and it doesn't really work. Or I go into the mafia, you know, it gets into Godfather time, and that's not good for other stuff. So I do take accent coaching. I still take accent coaching. Male
We've got,
voices,
oh
opposite
yeah,
gender
you're
voices.
doing my job.
Sorry,
Oh, but
sorry.
wait, no, it's just there's one before the male voices. Somebody wanted to know, what is one of your favorite books you've narrated?
The last one. It's always the one I did last.
What was that? You know, everyone's going to want to hear it.
Oh, well, all right. How the Penguins Saved Veronica is
Oh, I like that.
it's only just out. It's a
That
wonderful,
sounds good.
wonderful, wonderful book. It's more than one voice. It's three voices, but it's 75% me. And it's a wonderful book about a very bad-tempered, irritable, horrible, mean, nasty old lady of 80-something, who is, she's just horrible. I mean, she's basically really, really horrible, and you don't know why she's horrible. And she discovers, oh, it's a long story. She discovers she's got a grandson. She disowns him because he's a junkie, and she's a bit grand like that, and she doesn't like him. But then, and she's quite wealthy. So because she doesn't like her grandson and has disowned him, she's got to find out, she's got to decide who she's going to leave all her money to. And she sees a documentary about penguins on television. And so, to cut a long story short, she goes to Antarctica to look after penguins, and she adopts a baby penguin, whom she calls Patrick, which is the name of her grandson. And little by little, this penguin melts this old lady, and you then go into flashback. So you discover why she is the way she is through letters and diaries that she leaves for her grandson to read. So I had to age back from 87 to 15.
Wow.
And then go right through her life up to virtually the present day, and you discover why she's the way she is. But then it all comes out in the wash, and they all live happily ever after. But I mean, it was tough because I couldn't stop crying. I was, oh God, the penguin's sick. Oh my God. So it was really hard because I was weeping all the way through this bloody book. But it's a wonderful book. I loved it. I loved it.
Now I'll move on. We've got so many questions. Any tips for opposite gender voices?
Play the character, not the voice. As I said before, you don't have to go, women don't have to go down here to play men. I don't know that many men who talk down here, really. And men don't have to go up here to play women. Breath, attitude. Men very often are much more hesitant when they come to talk about their emotions. So, you know, if you're doing that love scene when he goes, darling, you're gorgeous, there's often a kind of, darling, I have to say this, but you're gorgeous. That's. I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but you know, it's finding a way that the character is masculine and has masculine characteristics. So they're often tougher. They're often slightly more decisive, except when it comes to emotional stuff. So perhaps slightly stronger, perhaps slightly faster, perhaps slightly slower, depending on the temperament of the character. For women, for men playing women, I say pull the voice back, go into this area, make her slightly more breathy. You don't have to go out of your natural register. You just ease it back and it becomes more feminine. Interestingly, I listened to one of my favourite audiobooks is the Just Williams stories, narrated by, and I've forgotten his name again. No, I haven't. Yes, I have. Hang on, I'll have to Google him. Just a second.
I'll Google it.
Please,
You go ahead and I'll Google it.
It's the set of the Just Williams stories. A well-known actor, And he is absolutely brilliant because he gives William a deeper voice than he gives William's father,
Martin Jarvis.
Martin Jarvis. Yep. And thank you from Pearl to everyone. Thanks, Pearl. Yes, Martin Jarvis. He gives William a deeper voice than he gives the father. But you know that William's a little boy. And it doesn't matter because he just gives him the attitude of that little boy. And so it's finding the personality and finding the character again rather than playing the voice. Don't ever go falsetto if you're a man, and don't ever go into your right down here, because not only does it hurt your voice after 4 hours, but it also gives you nowhere to go, because you can only do it on, you can't really put a lot of emotion into it if you're down here. It gives you no flexibility. So stay within your range, but find other ways to make them feminine or masculine.
Because the falsetto, sometimes do you not feel the falsetto makes women sound like they're stupid?
Yeah.
You're listening to it and you're like, you're making the woman unbearably dumb.
Yeah. It also doesn't sound like a person. It sounds like a man doing a squeaky voice. I know of one narrator who does, he's very young. He may be here, he may not. He's quite young, but he does absolutely brilliant women. And he sounds like a woman. Not a high, he doesn't go high, he doesn't go into the falsetto, but he's just got a knack of playing women. He's brilliant at women. But I know very few men who are actually, I mean, you would actually think it was a woman speaking. It's extraordinary. It's almost like, I don't know, countertenors. You hear a countertenor singing when they're doing that sort of alto female voice. It sounds very similar. It's a man. And you hear them speak and they've got a deep voice, but they kind of go up into their head register, and it's extraordinary. And there are some male narrators who can do that, but most men can't. And if they try, they sound really, really silly. Just as silly as women do if they go down here. So don't do it, guys.
Do you think singers have an advantage because of do you think it's something that's trainable, being able to use your voice in different ways that way? Or do you think it's something we're born with?
I think it has to do with listening as much as almost anything else, Daniela, because I think if you can't hear the difference between one voice and another voice, and if you can't hear the difference between your voice playing one character and playing another character, or reading the narrative and playing a character, then you're going to make your life is going to be a lot harder. And you can train your ears. You can train your ears to hear stuff that you wouldn't know you could hear. Monitor yourself. Listen through good quality headphones. Don't use earbuds, but use these things. And turn up the volume to a point where you can really hear yourself. And just listen and learn to listen. And you'll hear subtle differences. Some people have slightly more flexible voices than others, but most of us have got far more flexibility in our voices than we ever use. The range of the human voice is even an untrained voice. You listen to a child learning to speak. You listen to a kid of 5, 6, 7 before they become self-conscious about their voices, and the range of their voice is absolutely enormous. We lose it over time because we become constrained by society. You've got to talk in the right accent, or we've all got our telephone voices, haven't we? Don't ever use your telephone voice in audiobooks. It makes you sound really, really silly. We've all got a hyacinth bouquet hiding in our cupboards somewhere. My mother was horrendous. My goodness, you'd have thought she was the Queen Mum the way she went on. Hello, this is Margaret Lloyd here. For goodness sake, Mother, stop it. It was so funny. She really did. And she thought nobody knew, but everybody knew that she was putting on her telephone voice. So keep it for a character. Keep it for a hyacinth bouquet. Don't use it yourself. It's interesting. Actors, there are some people who believe that they go into acting because they can hide behind the characters they play. There are other actors who realize that if they're being good, or if they are good, then they reveal far more of themselves than they hide. Acting isn't about hiding anything, it's about revealing, because if you're revealing your emotions, you're revealing your emotional connection with something, and you're doing that in audiobooks exactly the same way. So if you're hiding and thinking, okay, this is a book and I'm going to read it, and yes, it's about, right, let's say it's about, the book I'm doing at the moment is about a mother and baby home where during the war, where girls are having babies and then they're giving up their babies for adoption. Now, there's a connection, there's an emotional connection in that for anybody who's ever had a child, and anybody who hasn't had a child, who wishes they had a child, or anybody who actually doesn't want a child and is glad they haven't had a child. There is a way for every single one of those situations to connect with the idea of a mother and baby home where there are lots of both married and unmarried mothers, because we're in the middle of wartime and husbands and fathers are off being killed in the fighting or whatever. There is something for every single person reading that story to connect with. Now, if you happen to be somebody who connects with that and it becomes painful, using that connection to tell the story makes that story, even though, believe me, it is definitely a pig's ear of a story because it's not terribly well written, but you have to find something in yourself that gets you to the point where you can tell that story as if it's, the most wonderful exposition of the raw emotion of giving up a baby for adoption, which is actually what it's all about, that you could possibly have. But if you think, no, this is too painful, I can't do this, and you hide what your emotional connection is, I'm not suggesting that you're hiding because you've given up a baby for adoption necessarily, maybe because you've always wanted a child and haven't had one, or maybe because you've got a child and you realise how difficult it must be to give it up. If you block yourself off from making that connection, your listener won't get the connection with the story that you can give them by being under the skin of the story. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Well, we're going to end on that note, Helen, because we're running over time. And
Can't we end on a cheerful? Can I say one cheerful thing?
Yes, please,
Before going through that?
please.
If you're narrating audiobooks and you don't love it, don't do it. Because we can't all be good at the same thing. You have actors who are wonderful in Shakespeare. Stick them in Les Miserables and they will be like a fish out of water. They can't do it because they're not hoofers, they're not singers and dancers. You've got voice actors who are absolutely brilliant at commercial reads. I'm not. I can't do commercials for toffee. I just can't. So play to your strengths. If you don't love reading, if you don't love audiobooks, and if you're not getting something out of it, then stop doing it and find something else. Why beat yourself up and give yourself hours of angst, hours of preparation, hours of recording, and hours of everything else for peanuts in comparison with what you earn doing commercials? Just because it's audiobooks. We can't all be good at everything. Play to your strengths and recognise your strengths. And if you do love it, and if you want to do it, have fun and enjoy it. And if you get a review on Amazon or Audible saying that's absolute crap, then go, well, up yours, because somebody else thought I was bloody brilliant. So there. And have faith in what you do for yourself. Do it for you as much as everything else.
That is a connection. It's so stupid. That's a connection that we all should know. It's that if you really love it, that's all the permission you need. It doesn't matter what they say. They can't take anything away from us.
That's
if
right.
you really love it.
You can, actors, there are professional actors who are paid megabucks. There are actors who do it purely because they love it. Now, the quality of that performance, who is to say that somebody playing in a church hall in Wigan isn't as good as somebody at the Royal Shakespeare Company. I've seen absolutely brilliant amateur performances. Those actors who are doing it because they love it. They're not doing it because they're earning whatever they're earning. That's not to say there aren't wonderful actors, professional and amateur, but, you know, if what you want to do is read audiobooks, then, you know, get on ACX and read audiobooks. You don't have to be doing it for I don't know, Simon and Schuster or anybody else. You're doing it because you love doing it. And if nobody hires me, I will go on Spoken Realms and I will find a book I want to read and I'll read it for nothing because I want to read that book. So, you know, it's about loving what you do and enjoying it. And if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Find something else that you do enjoy.
Now that was the way to wrap up. That's fabulous. That's see, okay, can I just, so since I can't afford to have you as a coach every single week, how about we just do one of these calls every week, Helen?
Yeah, okay. You say every month. I'm happy to do one every month.
Thank you so much. I definitely, please, if you would like to, would love to have you back sometime.
I'd love to.
And
I'd like
this
to do
is going to be on
masterclasses.
YouTube.
I'd like to have people doing reads so that we have listening lounges and people getting notes and direction. And
That's actually a good idea. We could do a smaller group. We will stay tuned, guys. Exciting things coming possibly.
I'd love to do that.
Thank you so much for joining, and it was wonderful having you all. And thank you, Helen. I just
Pleasure.
empowered. That's the word that just keeps every time I talk to you.
Lovely. I want to see who's here because I haven't looked down the list.
There is. I'll go down the list for you. I think you'll be able to see it on the link as well. But we've got Alyssa Rouge, Amy Soaks. Can you see the list from where you are?
I can't. No.
Okay, so we've Bethan Dixon, Blair Siebert,
I supported Bethan. Yes.
Bridget Lowry or Laurie.
Oh, Bridget's here. Hi, Bridget.
Bridget's here. Callie, Craig Hart, and Craig does Adventures in Narrating, so you might see that around. Deborah Parsons, Fiona McKinnon, Gina Davis, Jen McCool.
Wow.
Gina, well, she's here.
I can see her.
Jen McCool, Jenlyn, and Charlie Pringle. Some people's, their Twitter name is different, or their Zoom name. Jennifer March, Kelvin Witherspoon.
Hi, Kelvin.
Leonore Woodworth, Maziel, Melissa Benson, Nano Nagel,
Oh, Marciel's
Nikki.
here. Marciel Pena's here?
It,
Yeah, there
who?
she is. Hi, Marciel.
Yep, Maciel, Melissa, Nano, Nikki Zakos, Pearl, Raquel Beatty, Rebecca Hansen, Rebecca Lee, Sarah Ann. Okay, I cannot pronounce this name every time I've learned it. Siobhan.
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 It's Siobhan. I know Siobhan.
I have the hardest time with it. Stephanie Nemeth Parker and Susan Iannucci.
Fantastic. Well, it's lovely to meet you all. And, oh, hi from Switzerland. My goodness. Wow.
And somebody else was here, but I think we lost them right on the hour. So, yeah, it was a very exciting, a good group.
That was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was lovely to talk to you all.
Thank you so
hopefully I'll
much.
see you all again.
You will. You will. I know how to reach you now, so you're not going to get away from me.
Thank you, Pearl. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Miss
Thanks,
everybody
everyone.
that I haven't seen. I so want to see people again.
Didn't I tell you guys how amazing she is? Okay. Thank you so much,
I heard
Helen.
that.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Mwah.
Bye.
Bye, Pearl.
Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum